Hi, I'm Colette here today with Witch Ways, and I'm going to talk about, are you a witch? What even is a witch anyway? And I know this is a really kind of a clickbait topic on TikTok and a lot of the other social media feeds, but I just really wanted to share some of my own experience from being a witch for over 40 years and some of the things that my students have said over that time period. So first, let's talk a little bit about what the term witch is and where it comes from. It has old Anglo-Saxon roots in England and some of the northern countries, but originally comes from Old Germanic. You are a witch if you think you are or you want to be. I was taught that one of the easiest ways to initiate yourself into witchcraft is to say, I'm a witch, I'm a witch, I'm a witch. And that is a self-initiation. Defining yourself as a witch, or whether or not, in fact, you use that word, is very, very personal. You could potentially say yes to all the things I'm going to say are some signs of being a witch and still not identify as one, or maybe you don't relate to any of those things, but you still define yourself as a witch, and that is perfectly fine and as it should be. How do people define witchcraft? Sometimes people define it as the art of shifting consciousness at will. And another way that people define witchcraft is the practice or tool of creating reality or shifting or changing something through the use of energy or intention. And people might think that that energy or intention comes from various places. They might feel it comes from the autonomy of self and your own authority. They might feel that it's the vital life force that runs throughout the planet. They might feel that it comes from earth or sky and draw on that energy, and they might see that as spiritual, or they might just see that as a nature reality and draw on that energy. They might see it as something that they can work with other beings with to help create that change, or some completely other definition altogether. Some people may choose to not use the word witch, and there are many parts of the world and many parts of even the United States and Canada where that is not a safe word to use in many, many places. Also, one thing that is important to remember is that colonizers, particularly white European colonizers, have used that word as a way to demonize people, particularly people of color, in addition to the practice of demonizing older women, women in general, or queer or gay people. But it has been used specifically worldwide to demonize people that were classified as non-white. And so for that reason, it might be important to some people to not identify with that word and to use a different word. And in fact, people from all over the world have a variety of words, not just in Europe, but in many, many places that define or the practice of witchcraft. There might be a specific word for it. And in some places, people still prefer that word, of course, and define witch as someone who works magic to harm others. Interestingly enough, in Anglo-Saxon times, pre-Christianization in early Dark Age Europe was a time when people used the witch word generically. Post-Christianization, witchcraft only referred to magic that was used to harm people. Lots of people can relate to all of the things I'm going to say. And as I said before, some of people will relate to none of them, but you still get to call yourself a witch if you want to, and if that's what you feel that you are. Here's some signs that you might be a witch. Maybe you sense other beings or land spirits around you as you go about your life. And not all witches work with other beings or even believe necessarily in other beings. Magic is a tool that can be used whether or not you work with other beings or you choose not to. I do, and I do incorporate spirituality into my witchcraft. I don't know that I would consider myself Wiccan per se. I feel like I have a lot of different pluralities of ways of being a witch and lots of different ways of defining myself. But spirituality is definitely a part of my personal practice. And my work with other beings is definitely part of my practice. And I don't know that I always see it as like worship in the traditional sense, but more as relational and reciprocal. But you actually don't have to do that at all. You could go your whole life as a witch and never choose to work with another being at all. You might have an affinity for animals, and maybe they bring you information or show up at significant points in your life, or you communicate easily with them. Another sign that you are a witch is perhaps that you are really, really drawn to plants, especially herbs or trees. You are most comfortable when working around the energy of those types of beings. I think of them as beings, but you don't have to. And sometimes you are maybe able to discern the energy and specific personality of those plants or trees. Or you might just be very curious and drawn to them. Maybe you even mushed plants all up as a child and tried to plaster them on your siblings and playmates in a way to just kind of be like, I know I'm supposed to do something with these, and this seems like a good idea. Those are all things people have told me about. And maybe you just also talked easily to plants or animals aloud or inside yourself as a child and felt that was totally real. A lot of people who are witches, among other people, are really drawn to rocks and crystals. And some of you have probably heard me say this before, but I'm really big on working with rocks. Rocks have a lot of energy to them in the same way that crystals do. I live near the Columbia River Gorge, and the basalt crystal-shaped columns are amazing up there and have a lot of power to them, even though they're relatively new geologically. And crystals are awesome. They're really great. They definitely have a really interesting resonance and power to them. And as humans, I think we're all really drawn to the shiny, pretty things. We have a little bit of the magpie or the crow in us, and we go for those shiny things. And I've been kind of steering away from them just because I feel like they needs to stay in the earth, some of them, and they're getting really over harvested in sometimes not ethical ways. If you know someone who harvests crystals ethically, that's a whole different story, but there's lots of them that are harvested unethically. And I feel like, as I said before, stones are just as important. And I also think about the fact that many of our really, really practical spells and charms came down to us through folklore. And in general, people historically who were in the classes that worked with that kind of magic did not really have access to crystals. Crystals were pretty rare and usually reserved or used by people who were of a much wealthier class. And so I think the traditional lore has been more around using rocks or plants or animal parts. Not that that's not a reason to change things now. I think we can keep changing and incorporating new ideas, but I think there's lots of reasons to just work with rocks as well as crystals, or just instead of. Maybe one of the things that sets you apart a little bit and makes you think you're a witch is that you believe that your words and your intention have power. Another sign that you might be a witch, or at least an intuitive, is that you are drawn to or work with tools that are tools of divination. Things like cards or dice or runes. Perhaps your dreams bring you information and you work with them extensively. Perhaps, again, as I said before, you know or sense often what other people can't. An older trait of witchcraft that was seen as a talent, sometimes passed down in families, was the ability to cook or craft for others with intention. So that might be a healing soup for someone who's sick, or using not magic to make a quilt for a newborn. Whatever it is, it's a very precious gift. And it might be a sign that you are a witch. Maybe you pick up land magic really easily. You have the ability to sense what's going on with a place or a house and feel into whether people are welcome or not, which is similar to what I talked about before. But it's really specific to land and place, to just kind of get information from the land. And it might be as simple as a vibe that you feel like something's not quite right, or it's a place you don't feel comfortable, or that you don't belong. And that doesn't mean that it's a bad place. It might just be a place that's tended very heavily by spirits that are not your spirits or not of your people. And so I think it's important to pay attention to that, but it's definitely a sign that you are a witch if you pay attention to those things. Another idea that you might consider is, are you drawn to the underworld as much as the overworld? I think in a lot of modern religions, we focus on the overworld, the starry realm, the celestial realm, heaven, the afterlife above. But in witchcraft, the way I was taught at least, is that neither above nor below is better. We are what was called a non-dualistic practice. And what that means is that both powers of below and above are either neutral or equally good. And to me, magic is really, again, a very neutral tool. It really depends on your intention and how you use it. Do you feel like your ancestors are there to help you and intercede? My mother, after she became a Protestant Christian, was really kind of gave up on a lot of her psychic awareness stuff. But she would always say to me, so can you check into this thing with the ancestors? It's against my religion, of course. But I have experienced a lot of people in a lot of parts of the world get a lot of information from their ancestors. And traditionally, in many places, people actually had a whole belief system around the ability of ancestors to intercede for us with either deities or the spirit realm. And some people also would do things like craft really extensive monuments for their ancestors in order to enable the ancestors to continue to look out, support, and protect their descendants. And finally, this last one is definitely sort of on the TikTok list, but I just hear it all the time, and it's true for me as well, is that Halloween is your favorite holiday. You celebrate Samhain as if it was Christmas. At least we do in my community. So I want to just reiterate again that these are all just a few ideas. I think I put out like 10 ideas among hundreds of ways that you might know that you are a witch. And the most important thing is you are if you think you are. If you like this video, please hit the like and the subscribe button and sign up to get the notifications if you want, so that I can keep doing these videos. Thank you so very much for watching, and be well.